I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Music, and in this clip, we talk to the guy who wants to remaster Mike Rutherford's first solo album, Smallcreeps Day, Brian Coombes. I'd be remiss if I didn't say this again, but Smallcreeps Day is one of my favorite albums of all time. I'm very happy I've talked to three of the people who worked on that album. David Henschel. We have a whole series running with the Genesis producer right now. He produced the album for Mike Rutherford. Ant Phillips, who played keyboards on the album. And Noel McCalla, who is the vocalist on Smallcreeps Day. But I'm not the only super fan when it comes to this album. Here's Brian Coombes.
Now, I'm on a mission with Smallcreeps Day.
Good, so am I. So we might be able to combine forces with
Well, good. Anything I can do, please. When I heard that album, and I've gone on record saying this, and Genesis fans have skewered me, but I don't care. You like what you like. You either like Justin Bieber or you don't, you know.
Right.
When I heard that album, within the first listen, I told myself, this is my all-time favorite album. When I was through side one, I remember going, and I loved Noel so much, and I didn't know who Simon Phillips was. I'm a drummer. That's my son's stuff. My son's an amazing drummer. That's why, because I'm a bad drummer. That's why I make sure my son's a good drummer.
There you go.
And he did Out Into the Daylight. Chase had done a drum solo. He couldn't do what Simon did. But he did pretty good. He was 8, I think, at the time. Smallcreeps Day. What was your reaction when you first heard it?
Well, like you, I think that is one of my favorite Genesis solo records. The first thing that I noticed was Noel's voice and how lush the record sounded. I loved the keyboard sounds. I loved the production of that record. It felt like it was in the Genesis family. And again, it sounds similar to Duke, which is a record that I really enjoy. Yeah, and then I obviously, again, as a liner note guy, I certainly noticed that Ant was playing keyboards on that record. And it's been cool talking to Ant about what keyboards were used on that record. And I guess Dave Henschel was the one who brought in the Yamaha CS80, which was a big part of that record. So those beautiful lush pads for At the End of the Day are all Yamaha CS80. Of course, that's a keyboard that is rare and expensive now, so it's one that we don't have. But I love that record, and I love Noel's vocals and the harmonies on it. And like I say, I would list that as one of my favorite solo records.
At the end of the day, when people say some people didn't like that album because of Noel, not a lot, but there's now, because they're so used to, well, they were still missing Peter at the time for the folks who wouldn't, they were kicking and screaming, and somehow they wouldn't accept Phil. I don't know how someone wouldn't accept Phil Collins. I love Phil Collins. I freaking, right. I'm in that guy's voice. He can do no wrong with my books. But again, you either like something or you don't. Noel was probably the main reason. Well, and Ant's keyboard playing, no, they were all good. See, there I go. Because I can't decide what I love the most. At the end of the day, with him singing that gorgeous, lush, beautiful song, I remember thinking at the time, this is one of the most beautiful pieces I have ever heard in my life.
Yes, and I can tell you that when I was courting my wife before we were married, this was back in the days of mixtapes, I put 3 songs from Smallcreeps on a mixtape. It was At the End of the Day, Time and Time Again, and Every Road were 3 songs from that record that I don't know what made me think that was going to help me be successful wooing my wife or my future wife, but I guess it worked because we've been married for 23 years. So
I've got Smallcreeps Day, Toto the 7th one, and Elton John, Mad Mad Across the Water. My top 3 albums of all time. That's never going to change. Have you ever read the short story that it's based on, Smallcreeps Day?
Yes, that was a book that was, it was always on my list of things to find. And when it came back into print a few years ago, I ordered it from Amazon, and it just showed up from Amazon. It's a weird story.
So is it really like he's building a cog and he doesn't really know what he's building, and that's why he goes into the factory at night?
That's correct. Well, yeah, he's on the assembly line, and he decides, I have no idea what I'm building. and he goes on this adventure. And I guess from the book, it sounds like the factory is like the size of a city.
Yeah.
And he goes through different neighborhoods and different office buildings, and all kinds of weird, crazy, psychedelic stuff happens to him. And it was weird. The story is easier to follow on the album than it was in the book.
Okay. I'm going to order it. It's again, like you said, it's a bucket list thing where then you get busy and you get sidetracked, and I still have it on CD, and I've still got the original vinyl. When I sold all my vinyl, I kept Smallcreeps Day.
Right.
And now you can't even get it.
Who knows what that might lead to? I mean, I would love to have a conversation with Mike about letting me remix the record. And then who knows? I mean, Noel is interested in seeing what the reaction is, coming to America to do some shows, both with Ant, and maybe we learn more of the Smallcreeps stuff. Maybe we do the whole thing in its entirety. I'd love to be the one remixing, and I'd love to remix the record. And, I'm going to try to find a way to talk to Mike about making that happen. It doesn't seem like he's as interested in that record or his back catalog as I know Tony just re-released his entire back catalog, and Steve and Ant have. So I'm not exactly sure why Mike would, why he's kind of set that aside, because I think it's a beautiful record. I mean, you could make the argument that if you do that, then you have to do Acting Very Strange, and maybe he doesn't think that one is as strong, because I know I personally don't think that record is as strong. But it's part of the catalog. I mean, I always wonder why artists, they shouldn't be ashamed. I mean, it's a period piece. And I remember when I bought Acting Very Strange, I thought, hey, this is cool. This is going to give me a chance to hear Mike Rutherford singing his own songs. And that was the same reaction that I had with The Fugitive with Tony Banks. And I love The Fugitive. I know Tony Banks doesn't have the strongest voice in the world. Tony knows he doesn't have the strongest voice in the world. I still love that record. I love it.
Acting Very Strange to me was such a departure from Smallcreeps Day, but I have to agree with you. I picked it up and listened to it with fervor. I'm going, it's part of the catalog, and there's an artist earned that. I used to say Bruce Hornsby, even though he switched so many times, one of my favorite artists of all time, but he it's like the Windham Hill label. When Windham Hill was doing New Age, they garnered trust from people where you'd go, they've done enough for me where I become a homer for them. There's a certain trust that Mike Rutherford, had garnered from me. That's the way it is.
Right. And, he followed that up. I mean, if that was something in his artistic direction, in his progression, you look at what happened next. He went from singing by himself on Acting Very Strange to having Paul Young and Paul Carrick sing on that first Mechanics record.
Yeah.
So if Acting Very Strange led to that, then it was worth it.
Too bad about Paul Young, the other Paul Young.
Yeah.
I used to like Sad Cafe. I used to buy their stuff.
Remember, there's a whole feature on Which Way the Wind Blows, an Ant Phillips tribute album on our sister channel, Rock History Book. There'll be links in the description of this video where Brian Coombes talks about every track, and we play snippets from the album as well. And remember, pick up a t-shirt, helps us pay our students, our film students, who help us clip these interviews together. That's how we pay them, through t-shirt sales. The more t-shirts we sell, the faster we can get these clips to you, because we're like 20 interviews behind right now. But we're closing the gap. There'll be links in the description of this video where you can pick up a t-shirt. Make sure you comment on our video, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. More from Brian Coombes next week. I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Music.